Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right in today because we're setting the stage for an investigative look into what is honestly one of the most fascinating illusions in modern retail. We're going to explore exactly how a massive consumer scam brilliantly disguised itself as an elite, ultra-exclusive luxury brand. Today, we're looking at the spectacular rise and the totally explosive fall of a company known as Vale Crown.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if you paid over $2,000 for an $18 watch? I want to introduce you to a guy named Eli Turner. Now, Eli was a car salesman living in Dallas, Texas. He wasn't rich, but he really wanted to feel successful. He wanted to feel like he was finally moving up in the world, you know? So he saved up his money for 4 straight months just to buy a $2,150 Vale Crown Heritage One watch. But just a couple of weeks after he bought the thing, the strap actually started peeling. And on top of that, the metal itself felt suspiciously light. So he took off the strap to investigate, and he found a tiny, almost invisible factory code stamped right on the back.
Well, that tiny hidden code literally changed everything. Eli typed the code into Google, and he found his exact same watch sitting right there on a wholesale marketplace for just $18.73. I mean, to put that into perspective, that represents an astronomical markup of over 10,000%. That is over 100 times the cost to manufacture. Eli realized right then and there that he hadn't bought a piece of luxury craftsmanship at all. He bought a cheap, mass-produced watch with a completely fabricated identity slapped on it.
Which brings us to part 1, selling the illusion. And this brilliantly illustrates the mind behind the entire operation. To understand this illusion, we have to look at its architect, a guy named Mason Vale. Mason grew up working class in Fresno, California, and he realized pretty early on that people don't just want products, right? They want proof that they are winning at life. Look at the stark contrast he created to sell that proof. For the marketing, Mason actually changed his last name to Vale and built an entire brand identity using fancy words like heritage and European craftsmanship. He even came up with the catchy slogan, "For the few who move different." But the actual reality? It was just Mason, sitting in a rented apartment, using Canva to make graphics, setting up a basic Shopify store, and sourcing dirt-cheap items from overseas factories.
His mechanical playbook for dressing up such a cheap product was shockingly simple. First up, source that $18 watch. Second, spend an extra $3.40 on a premium velvet box with gold lettering. That way, the unboxing experience feels super expensive. Third, rent supercars for a day to do some flashy photo shoots. And step 4, well, this was the real secret to his crazy growth. He targeted small influencers. Instead of paying massive celebrities millions of dollars, he just sent free watches to young influencers who really wanted to look rich. You know, the guys posting with rented cars and long captions about discipline. They happily flooded Instagram with expensive-looking content featuring his watch.
Mason had this really dark but brilliant realization about consumer psychology. He noted, they won't pay for the watch, they'll pay for who they think they become when they wear it. He knew he wasn't selling a timepiece. He was selling an identity. In fact, he originally started selling that watch for $895. But he quickly realized something crazy. Raising the price actually made the illusion of luxury even stronger. So he repeatedly jacked the price up. First to $1,250, then $1,650, and finally all the way to $2,150. Why? Because people just naturally assume that expensive automatically means valuable.
Moving on to part 2, drop shipping in a tuxedo.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer, audacious scale of the grift. I mean, it is just staggering. Look at these product lines. You've got an executive briefcase costing a mere $22 to make, being sold to guys trying to look professional for $1,400. Apex sunglasses, made for $7, sold for $650. And a tiny $4 legacy bracelet pushed for $390. Through this totally ridiculous catalog of overpriced accessories, Vale Crown drove their company to a staggering $80 million in annual sales.
And he didn't stop there. Mason capitalized on that exact same insecurity by launching a fake VIP country club called the Crown Circle. For $5,000 a year, you got to feel like you were part of the elite. And it worked perfectly. 5,000 memberships sold out in just 48 hours, pulling in $25 million in instant revenue. And what did they get for that? Literally just Zoom calls and motivational emails. No joke. But here is the absolute genius of the whole scheme. He brilliantly weaponized his customers' pride. By charging them so much money, he essentially turned them into unpaid security guards. They would rapidly defend the brand against any online criticism, simply because they couldn't bear to admit to themselves that they'd been fooled.
Now let's look at part 3, the internal reality.
Because behind those crazy revenue numbers, there was a very real human cost, and it was sitting right inside their customer support inbox. One message captured it perfectly. A customer wrote, "I saved for this watch because I wanted to feel proud of myself. Now I feel stupid." This was the reality witnessed every single day by Nina Parker, who is a 24-year-old support rep for the company. So while Mason was out living it up, she was stuck staring at over 40,000 unread tickets from regular, everyday people. Single fathers, warehouse workers, young graduates. People who had spent money they really couldn't afford on defective, broken goods.
And how exactly did the company handle this massive mess? With Mason's strict internal policy, never admit low quality. Nina and the two other incredibly underpaid support workers were forced to follow these terrible scripts. When customers would call in angrily complaining that their watch straps were literally peeling off, support was instructed to tell them it was just a natural break-in period, or that the obvious flaws were simply part of the handcrafted experience.
Well, let's move to and see how this builds as we enter part 4, the spell breaks.
You see, an empire built on a lie is incredibly fragile, and its downfall was explosive. It all started when Eli Turner, our guy from the beginning, posted a simple expose video from his kitchen table on TikTok. He just showed his watch right next to the wholesale listing. Within hours, the video snowballed. Within days, the internet turned the whole company into a massive viral joke, coining the hilarious phrase, "drop shipping in a tuxedo." Mason tried to save face with a completely disastrous Instagram Live where he just got mocked relentlessly in the comments. The luxury spell was shattered by a joke. Seeing all this chaos, Nina Parker finally had enough and leaked supplier invoices and internal docs to a journalist named Claire Benson. In just 6 short months, the entire multi-million-dollar brand completely collapsed.
When Claire's devastating journalistic expose was finally published, it contained this internal quote from a former designer at the company. Buyers were paying for ambition, and that was the final nail in the coffin. It fully exposed the ugly truth that Mason wasn't selling luxury, he was just selling insecurity back to people. That spark immediately ignited class action lawsuits, furious Crown Circle members were demanding their money back, and eventually payment processors completely froze the company's bank accounts.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the true cost of status.
In his final viral interview, a journalist actually asked Mason point-blank if he regretted misleading his customers. His response? "I regret that people don't understand branding." It's wild, right? It perfectly demonstrates that, rather than admitting he ran a total scam, he chose to blame the public. He actually preferred to lose his entire empire and watch it burn to the ground rather than simply admit he had fooled them.
So the crucial point is really pretty simple. Branding without truth is manipulation. Look, we all know that storytelling matters in business, for sure. But selling cheap products by actively hiding the source, inventing a completely fake history, and exploiting human insecurity as status, well, that isn't luxury. That is just a costume. And that brings us to our powerful final thought. Real success is not what you wear to look important. It is what you build when nobody is watching. It is absolutely amazing to reflect on how fragile an image-only business truly is. I mean, it's so fragile that a single customer with a smartphone camera and a wholesale website can burn a massive empire to the ground. It really leaves you wondering, in today's world of endless social media flexing, how many other luxury brands out there are just an illusion waiting to be exposed?